So here, guys, I'm going to show you a little bit of modeling theory when it comes to vehicles and how to make a vehicle. And this is my little hovercraft that I made for an animated short I'm working on right now. Ignore the weird, glitchy UVs. I don't know why Maya does that sometimes. These are mirrored images of each other. So what I did was I built this guy in sections and pieces and parts. I built it like an actual car is actually built. Now in games, sometimes you keep it a solid mass, and I'll talk a little bit about that theory. But in this one, I used a series of spline curves, and I aligned them up appropriately to each piece of my car. And then I snapped those pieces and lined it up with the edge flow, so it actually has a nice base to work off. I even have this rigged, it's my little futuristic guy here. So when I believe this guy opens, there you go, there's the door opens. This may be my earlier one. I also had this part rigged here. I don't think it's in this one. Oh, maybe it is. So if I grab this, switch that to, let me see if that opens up. Yep, there it goes. So this is pretty much my futuristic car that I made. And again, all I did was use a series of spline curves and to build the structure. So let's talk a little bit about this, and then we'll move on to showing a little bit of the block modeling and how to tackle that, because there's a couple ways you can do it. Let's see here. Open. There you go. Construction samples. So let me hit open. And don't save. So these are the early construction pieces that I used to make that car. And I went back a bit. And the reason why I pulled these guys up, I like to save my modeling as I go, so I can use them for lectures. And you'll notice when I am modeling, I'm keeping my edge flow pretty similar to each other. He looks like an early Prius right now. Looks like the baby of the original. So what I'll do, let me go to my channel box. I think I have some rim wireframes in here. There we go. Here's some wireframes. So what I did was I even extruded on a path in some cases, and used these spline curves to help build the geometry that I wanted. Let me move him back for a second. Let me grab him too. I'm going to move them off to the side for a second. Let me double click on this guy. Switch this to world so that my movement is equal. And an example is I tried to start this railing here. You can see in the other one it's finished, but this is the early one. And when I made this rail, I grabbed two different line curves. Switch this to surfaces. And I went to surfaces, and I used loft. Now, using loft, I set it to quads and count, and then I set the amount that I wanted. In this case, I could probably get away with 100, and I hit apply. And now this gives me a construction piece to work with. And the nice thing about this, I can go and move these around, fold them, and tweak them out. And the same thing with every part of your car. Right click here, I can do control vertices, grab the pieces, move them up, place them in the right spot, stretch them out where they want. Now if you don't have enough pieces for your edges, and I went over a little bit of this theory when it came to gun construction, my video on that. If you don't have enough pieces, or at least enough control points, edit points or control vertex, on a line, you can always go back to surfaces, edit curves, and you can rebuild your curve. And rebuilding your curve, you can make it, punch in like, maybe you want 20. I'm not sure why you'd want that much, but you can hit rebuild. You'll see it shuffle. You'll get more edges spread out on the polygon output, but it also gives us a little bit more we can control. You get a little more finite detail, and I can bend this car into the framework that I want. So here is a combination. This guy's a combination of lofting as well as box modeling. You can see I did a simple box model, started to push and pull it out, but I kept it clean as I went. But if you are box modeling, say you are building these pieces, the one thing you want to keep in mind, go over here, hit the F key, is your construction lines. Now we see this guy all set up, but you'll notice on a regular car there's going to probably be a construction line here. So what I can do is grab this group of geometry. I'm going to go and do my selection tool, paint selection tool, faces, and I'm going to select this face, all these faces right here. And I love paint selection tool because it's built in backface culling, which you guys heard me get excited about in the past. So I don't have to turn on backface culling, because my backface culling is a little bit inconsistent. It can turn on one moment and the next moment you can't get it to turn off. It can be a little bit of a hassle. Let's grab this and we'll deselect this, hitting Control. You don't even have to hit Shift when you use this brush. Double check and make sure I didn't select anything I don't need. I'm going to ignore the other side. They're actually mirrored from each other. Hit Control to deselect that. Double check this and Control to deselect this area here. Alright, so what I'll do if I'm using box modeling, I'll go in here and separate this piece. Oh, looks like we got a little bit more to separate. And I make sure that I have these guys lined up and looking good. And I'll show you to do this with a loft in a second. But I have this guy all set up, looking just dandy. And I'm going to go in here and I'll go to my polygons. And I can also do that through the hotbox. A lot of times I won't always do hotbox on my lectures on video, just for the fact that I don't want to go too fast. People can get lost. But I use hotbox on a regular basis. So I'll go in here and do mesh, and I'll do extract. And again, to get the hotbox, you hit the space bar, for those that did not know. Let me Control Z for a second. Looks like I'm missing some stuff here. So let's grab that last face. Double check everything. Good to go. Cool. And we'll go back into mesh, extract. Now, when I extract this piece, I now need to make it look like it's actually part of this car. So what I'll do is I call this making a little homegrown bevel. So I'll do the Insert Edge Loop tool, and I'll do it right at the edge here in this guy, especially for a lower poly model. This works really well for games. And I'll do it another one over here. And I could even do a third one if I wanted. So what I do now is I'll go and grab this edge, I'll actually put these guys both on edges here real quick. Make this a little bit faster, otherwise I'll be double working and selecting stuff, and it's going to be kind of a pain in the butt. So I'll grab these edges. I'll do Shift Select in this case. And you have to be really clever about this, because you don't want to mess up the whole thing. What I do it is one projection angle versus another. Just makes it easier to get this done. I'll deselect what I am actually selecting, probably in the background accident. Probably need to slice that up some more, but I'm just going to leave that for now. I forgot about that edge right there. So we're going to get this guy all selected. Let me deselect what I don't want. Notice when I combine, the instant disappeared. So with this all selected, oh my, I was being a jerk. You didn't want to add that in there. We'll go in here, and you can push this in. And when you push these edges in, oh, looks like I didn't want to select the whole thing. That's fine. When we push these edges in, what I'll do is I'll make it look like it has a built-in bevel, like there's a bevel on this object. And you can even do it after the fact. So you can do it like I'm doing it here, or just do it ahead of time. So we'll just go in here and do it ahead of time. There you go. Bam. It's a little bit easier to do it before you extract. So we'll go in here and do an Insert Edge Loop. Insert Edge Loop. There you go. But if you do need to separate it, maybe for door purposes or whatever, Maya does have a bug where you select edges and gets weird on you. So what I do is select edges and unselect them, go back to object mode, select it again, and then go to edges. I know, it's weird. It does. It's been doing that for a while. So I'll grab this here. Notice it makes a little bit of a cleaner cut now. And we'll go to the Move tool. And I can go in here now and push this in if I wanted to get that kind of beveled edge you'll see, or lifted edge you'll see in an actual vehicle. Now I would normally make that a lot tighter, and I may even disregard the edge over here, and it's just not patched up yet. So, but you get an idea that as you move this inward, you can get that lip you always get on an actual vehicle, and you can make another cut if you wanted to. Control Z. This is where it might get buggy. I'm going to be super lazy here and just get in close. Yep, there you go. There's the bug. Thanks, Maya. You're awesome. You're welcome, Sean. Stupid jerk. Alright, so go in your object mode. So we'll go in here now. I really lecture like this, ladies and gentlemen, if you're wondering. And we'll make another cut. See, there's that bug again. There you go. And you can make another cut in there to make it a little bit more interesting. And you can move and grab the existing cuts that we just made. And we can even pull this in or pull it out more based on what your needs. And you can get even more of a highlighted edge and even tighten it in if you wanted to. So if you needed to scale it in a bit, you can scale it in appropriately. Oh, I'm doing this with it all the way around, but you guys kind of get the point there, messing with this guy. So if you kept it all in one piece, that would be ideal to do that. Otherwise, if you have it separate pieces, you have to make sure you have the beveled edge maybe on the piece ahead of time. So case in point, if we go back over here, probably should have just been messing with this guy in the first place. Notice I did that here. I pushed it in, and then I snapped them together. And I made sure my edges were equal to each other so the snapping would be a little bit easier. So this is an example of what I was trying to do earlier. And to save time, I decided just to go straight here instead of duplicating my whole process. So I just bent the edges in and then snapped them to the opposing edges which also were bent in. And it fits really well. Now you're like, well, Sean, how do you snap that without going insane? Well, what I like to do is I'll go in here, go to object mode, hit the insert key, and then with the insert key selected, make sure modify center pivot is active. I'll keep my finger on the V key and I'll snap it to opposing corner. This is an old game trick that we used to do when we'd modulate. Make things a lot easier. And keep my finger on it, snap it over here to the corner, hit insert. So now, if I want to make sure that that piece that I just made is connected to the right spot, I just move it right in and I can snap it to that point. And that's the benefit of making your edges equal to each other when you're dividing stuff up. Windshields can be tricky but not impossible. Just make sure that the silhouette is somewhat matching. What I did on my car, if you noticed, I even had a lip. I made it like an actual car. So that my example is really high poly. But for a lot of times when you're doing something a little bit more lower poly, what you can do is isolate a region. Now, this is just a simple box to get this example laid out. You can isolate a region of an area that you want. Say, hey, I want this to be like the pilot area where the pilot's going to be. And we can go in here. Clearance won't be very good, but we can go in here and I can extrude this piece, move it in, and decide whether I want to lift it up or bring it back. It's up to you. We'll just, in this case, we'll kind of maybe lift it up a little bit. And with this lifted up, you can actually use the outer edge if you wanted. And you can lift this guy up to maybe get a lip for your windshield if you wanted to. Now again, you have to be careful because it won't always extrude perfectly. Notice it gets a little weird here. So you have to do a little bit of editing because it's all based on each individual face. And this being a half, we'll have to go in here and remove the opposing edges here and line them up. So example is I'd have to go in here, grab these guys, deselect what I don't want, and delete them. After they're deleted, I need to go in here and line up my edges so they are in the right spot. And you can snap to grid if you wanted to, but we're not set in grid right now, so we'll go in here, and if you have bonus tools set in, you can use some alignment tools that they have. I'm not going to go over them just yet, but a lot of times I'll just go in here and eyeball it because I'm going to add a piece anyway, so I'll just go in here and put them in about the same ballpark. Grab the whole thing. And just put them like, right about. It doesn't necessarily have to be perfect because when I bring the other piece in, I can use the merge selection tool or merge vertex tool, and you guys used this before. But you can set this guy when you use him to the centerpiece, and he's really great. And I go over using this tool when I talk about the gun gun modeling and so forth. So that's a little space car. But let's talk about lofting for a second. So some of you guys are real curious about that. Let's look at curves. There's multiple ways. We're not going to go over bi-rail today. Bi-rail is kind of cool, but maybe I'll go over it in a different video. Control D, duplicate this. I'll show you the square tool, which can be good for windshields, and maybe go over another one. So modify center pivot, and Control D, E, keep my finger on the J key, rotate that. Now, the lofting tool, let me Control duplicate these guys. Whoa, I hate this selection bug that happens in Maya. It's pretty awesome. The F key there, grab these here. It's phenomenal. Alright, so I'm going to try to make do with this. Maybe we'll just go to Outliner. There is a bug in 2013, even with all the service packs, it doesn't always work, is a selection issue. Let's go Nerf Curve 1 and 2. See it get selected. What you do is, normally what I'll do, I don't want to do this because I'm videotaping right now, is I'll close Maya and open it up again. But I won't do that this time. We'll do Control D and duplicate these guys, move them over. We'll use them for loft in a second. But right now we have these guys. Do Control D, move him over. Right click. We'll do Edit Point on this guy. Notice it says selectable. It's being really weird right now. Edit Point. Now it's working. Notice I forced it to work by changing its mode. Selectable. And Edit Point. So what you'll do when using the square tool, keep my finger on the V key, you can snap. You need to snap to each corner. So what I did just now is I right-clicked, went to Edit Point on each one of these lines. And I have to make sure that each one of these lines can connect with each other. Because when using this square tool, you have to make sure there's a complete connection. Got it right there. And when you select your object, so if I select my object, you want to try to, I believe it's the clockwise. Let's pull up our surfaces here. Let's go to surfaces. Let's go to our bi-rail. Actually, not bi-rail, go straight to square. Open up square. And with the square tool active, we're going to go in here and we're going to use this tangent to select our curves. Now, we're going to use polygons. When you do polygons, you do quad and count. I'm going to keep it at 100. And I'm going to select each one of these curves in a clockwise rotation. And I'm going to build it. Now, it probably doesn't need clockwise anymore. It used to be kind of finicky about that. If you guys do find that it doesn't, just let me know. So now I can build this square piece, and you can use this piece to manipulate the shape of your hull, your hood, your windshield, and it's all poly based. And again, you want to use quad and count. Make sure you put this. A lot of people miss this because this gives you the amount that you want. You could also do control points. Unfortunately, when you can set it to control points, you lose your quad and count options, and it doesn't look as clean. Again, if you don't have enough control points, edit point or control vertex, let me see here. There we go. If you don't have enough control vertex or edit points, you can always rebuild these lines and get some more control areas to mess with. Now, another one we talked about before, I'm not going to get into the bi-rail just yet. Bi-rail's okay, but we'll talk about it later on because these can be a little bit tricky to mess with your head. But using these, again, the one I like to use too is my loft. Loft, again, is really nice to use, and you saw me do it earlier. So here's our two lines from before. And I like loft because it's faster than bi-rail. Bi-rail, you have to make sure those lines are connected, like you saw me do with the square. But loft, I can quickly make the shape that I want and bend it around the shape that I need. So I'll go right here, grab all these guys, you saw me do, quad and count, hit apply. There we go. There's our piece, modify center pivot, move them over, and then now I can just grab a whole line even and bend it to the will and the shape that I want. Now be careful when you are doing this and you want to extrude on this surface. Don't do it when you're in edit mode here, when these guys still have history, because if you do, you're going to mess things up. good example is if I say I grab these faces here and I say I want to extrude them. God knows why I would. But I wanted to extrude this. And then now I go in here and mess with these points again. Oh, let's go back into object mode. And I move it. You'll notice it's going to shift really weird. It looks like it's mutating. So just be careful about that, because it's Maya trying to figure out with the history exactly what shape you want. Now, it looks like a cool effect. But if you don't want this, it's going to be bummed. You're going to be bummed out, and you're going to end up drinking and modeling late at night, and everyone will cry, and your family will disown you. So yeah, just be aware of that. A history is not going to read so well. Alright, so I think that's about it for the vehicle side of things. Again, if you are going to do stuff in polygon mode, notice in my samples I built each one of the pieces, and it can even extrude some of the pieces out if I wanted to. But as you're building, I'm going to give you guys some pointers here to make your life a little bit easier. I also added the lattice, which is phenomenal, because the lattice allows me to go in here and control several different aspects of my car and vehicle, and it'll actually affect the model. Now this guy isn't active anymore. I think I deleted history. Oh, there we go. This guy's active. So let's go right click, lattice point. So, but you'll notice I have two different pieces in this one. So you can form a lattice on two different objects. So if I selected them in object mode, say we got this guy here, and say we got this guy, Control D, duplicate them up. And I don't want to have to fix one and then keep fixing the other. I can actually go on this whole guy here and go to Create Deformers, lattice on the whole thing, right click, and I can change the shape of my vehicle. Sorry, that's me hitting the hotbox here. On the fly. So I can go in here and change the whole thing. If I have enough divisions on my lattice, say you made it already and you realize you need more divisions, you got to make sure it's set to its default. I can go in here and just set in object mode. Go to 5, 5, and 5. There you go. And I can even mess with my wheel well. So I can do this a little bit more micro instead of macro. In other words, I can change things on a smaller scale. So I need to move my wheel well back, or say I need to move the whole thing back to get my wheel well to line up correctly. And my edge flow to be consistent. I can do that. See that right there? Pretty cool. And these are two different pieces. That's one piece and that's another piece, both having the lattice on it. And that allows you to stylize and tweak things out. That's the only reason I really have it on these models. So as I go, I can decide whether I want to change the whole thing or keep the whole thing. Alright? So the key is making these pieces snap together. But always make sure you work with an ortho. I don't have my ortho loaded right now. But what I mean by that is keeping your reference images for what you're building. Otherwise, you're going to keep making stuff up just like a little kid drawing, and you'll never decide on what you want. And I ran into a little bit of that with this guy because I kept changing his design. Finally, I came up with a design that I liked. So keep those things in mind. Post questions if you got them, and I can help you out as you go. And I can, those that are in my class, I can even show you how to make cool tires and so forth, and maybe I'll make a video on that later on. That's it.